What if the greatest danger to faith is not open rebellion against God, but the subtle twisting of truth until evil is dressed in garments of light? What if the most terrifying sin is not found in the streets, but in the pulpits, where words meant to expose darkness are instead used to bless it? Imagine hearing a voice declare that what is destructive is actually holy, that what corrodes the soul is to be celebrated as love. Could it be that this is the oldest deception of all, the serpent's whisper reborn in modern language? And if so, how many have already fallen under its spell without even realizing it? Dietrich Bonhoeffer warned of this deadly inversion, where the church no longer calls sin by its name, but baptizes it with sacred words. He saw that when a society begins to call evil good, it is not merely error, it is rebellion disguised as virtue. And worse, it numbs the conscience, making the lie feel like truth, until resistance seems impossible. Do you not feel it already? The slow erosion of conviction, the silencing of those who dare to speak, the applause of crowds who would rather bless their chains than face the cost of freedom. But here is the haunting question. If evil is now cloaked in the language of righteousness, how will you recognize it? If the very guardians of truth turn traitor, who will sound the alarm? Bonhoeffer's warning was not a relic of the past, but a voice cutting through the noise of our present age. He did not fear the world's hatred as much as he feared the church's compromise, the fatal moment when believers themselves choose comfort over obedience, applause over faithfulness. This is not just a story of history, it is the story unfolding before your eyes, and yet within this shadow lies the hidden challenge, to see what others refuse to see, to name what others dare not name, and to stand where others have bowed. You may think you know what it means to resist evil, but the truth will disturb you. Stay, because what follows is not simply a warning from Bonhoeffer. It is a mirror held up to your own soul, forcing you to decide whether you too have begun to call evil good. There is a moment when language itself becomes poisoned, when words no longer reveal but conceal. Imagine hearing the word good whispered over what corrodes the soul, and freedom spoken over chains that tighten around the spirit. It sounds absurd, yet it is precisely this distortion that Bonhoeffer called the most deadly sin. The exchange of names, the rebranding of darkness as light. The tragedy is not only that society commits this deception, but that the church echoes it, sanctifying what should be condemned. How can faith survive when its very vocabulary is betrayed? How can truth stand when the words that carry it have been inverted into their opposites? Bonhoeffer once said that silence in the face of evil is itself evil. But what happens when the silence turns into applause? When pulpits that were meant to thunder against sin instead resound with approval, dressing corruption in the garments of compassion? It is here that the line between good and evil dissolves, leaving believers adrift in a fog where discernment feels impossible. The crowd nods along, reassured that everything destructive is merely misunderstood, that holiness demands acceptance of what God himself calls unclean. The conscience, once sharp and alive, begins to sleep under this lullaby, and perhaps this is why the warning feels terrifying, because it does not come from the outside, but from within. The betrayal is not the enemy storming the gates, it is the guard who opens them, the watchman who waves the invaders through. Bonhoeffer saw this with chilling clarity in his own time, when pastors baptized the ideology of a tyrant with holy water. Today, the forms are different, but the deception is the same. Evil does not always shout. Sometimes it sings in hymns and hides beneath prayers. Yet here lies the paradox. The more society calls evil good, the more intolerant it becomes toward those who dare to resist. Suddenly, faithfulness looks like rebellion, conviction like hate, and obedience like crime. Do you see how twisted this spiral has become? And if you see it, can you remain unmoved? Or is the discomfort rising inside you proof that the warning is already unfolding in our own age? Consider the psychological weight of hearing lies repeated until they feel like truth. The human mind begins to adjust, bending itself toward what is celebrated and shrinking away from what is condemned. Bonhoeffer knew that evil's greatest weapon was not brute force, but persuasion, the slow reshaping of the moral compass until North and South trade places. What once caused outrage now earns applause. What once demanded repentance now invites celebration. The deadly sin here is not merely that evil is tolerated, but that it is honored as sacred, and in that honor lies destruction. There is a spiritual numbness that settles when people begin to accept this inversion. Consciences that once trembled now stay calm. Warnings that once pierced hearts now sound exaggerated, and yet, deep within, there remains a faint whisper. This is not right. That whisper is the voice of truth, refusing to die. But each time the crowd calls evil good, the whisper grows fainter until it becomes nearly impossible to hear. This is how deception works. Not with one loud command, but with 1,000 subtle concessions. What terrifies is not only the loss of truth, but the loss of the ability to even desire it. People no longer search for what is right. They crave only what is comfortable. They want a God who affirms their every impulse, a gospel that never confronts, a Christ without a cross. Bonhoeffer called this hollow religion a faith emptied of power. And what could be more terrifying than standing before eternity with a soul lulled into slumber, never realizing it had been fed poison labeled as honey? So ask yourself, how do you discern when even your teachers betray the truth? How do you resist when resistance costs you acceptance, comfort, even safety? This is the haunting loop Bonhoeffer forces us into. To see the danger is already to be set apart. To name it is already to risk exile, and to stand against it is already to invite suffering. But perhaps suffering is the only proof that you have not joined the applause. There is an ancient echo here, one that returns us to Eden itself. Did not the serpent whisper, "You will not surely die"? Was that not the first time evil was called good? When rebellion was dressed as enlightenment and disobedience was disguised as freedom? Bonhoeffer's warning is not new. It is the same lie that has haunted humanity from the beginning, now spoken with new accents and modern robes. To call evil good is not only to lie, it is to resurrect the serpent's voice within the sanctuary of God. But do not think this danger is only about others. It is about us. How many times have you softened the truth to avoid conflict? How many times have you silenced your own conscience to remain accepted? This sin is not only deadly because of what it does to the church as a whole, it is deadly because it creeps into the individual heart. It is not just the pastor who blesses evil from the pulpit. It is the believer who blesses it in secret by refusing to resist. And once resistance dies, faith itself begins to decay. Bonhoeffer knew the cost of naming evil for what it was. He faced isolation, imprisonment, and death because he refused to call tyranny holy. And now his voice rises again like a burning question. Will you repeat the deadly sin of calling evil good, or will you pay the price of standing against it? There is no neutral ground. Silence is not safety, it is complicity. And complicity, no matter how softly it is spoken, always sides with death. So the spiral closes, and you are left with a choice that cannot be ignored. To hear Bonhoeffer's terrifying warning is already to stand at a crossroad. Either you numb yourself with the crowd, blessing what God has cursed, or you awaken to the unbearable cost of truth. The question is not whether evil will be called good. It already is. The question is whether you will join the applause or dare to resist. There comes a moment when the warning can no longer remain abstract, when the words burn through the veil of distance and confront you face to face. This is that moment. The deadly sin of calling evil good is not an idea buried in history, nor a shadow belonging only to corrupt leaders and cowardly pastors. It is a mirror being held before your own soul. How many times have you laughed at what you knew was vile, How many times have you excused what you once condemned? Every compromise, every silence, every nod of approval has been a thread woven into a garment of betrayal, a garment you may already be wearing without realizing it. Bonhoeffer's voice rises like fire against the comfort of neutrality. He does not allow you to hide behind excuses of culture, tradition, or fear. He reminds you that the cost of discipleship is always the cross, and the cross cannot be carried by hands that bless what God has cursed. The terrifying warning is this: once you join the applause, you may never find your way back. Evil, once crowned with holy words, does not remain still. It grows, it consumes, it enslaves. And when it has finished its work, you will awaken too late to discover that your faith was hollow, your convictions traded for smoke. Look around you. Do you not see the signs? Do you not hear the sermons that soothe rather than pierce, the songs that entertain rather than convict, the prayers that bless comfort rather than summon courage? This is not just decline, it is inversion, a reversal so complete that darkness wears a halo and light is mocked as intolerance. To call evil good is to dethrone God in practice, even while his name is still on your lips. And Bonhoeffer's warning crashes into the present with unbearable weight. The church that blesses evil is no longer the church at all. And here, at the edge of this spiral, you stand with no place left to retreat. Either you will numb yourself again, telling your heart that these words are for someone else, or you will feel the fire burning against your defenses, demanding surrender. This is the climax of the warning, not information but decision. Will you join the multitude who bless their chains, or will you stand, even if you stand alone, and call evil by its true name? The choice is not for tomorrow. It is already upon you, and the silence you choose now will echo into eternity. It is here, in the silence that follows the storm of words, that the weight of this warning truly settles. The deadly sin of calling evil good is not only a danger to society, nor merely a crisis for the church. It is the fracture of the human soul itself. When light is named darkness, when poison is named water, when bondage is named freedom, something sacred within us begins to die. And yet, in the very naming of this truth, something awakens again. You can feel it now. The pulse of conviction stirring where numbness once lived. The whisper of conscience louder than the applause of the crowd. This is not an ending, but an unveiling. The words of Bonhoeffer do not close a chapter. They ignite a fire that refuses to be contained by time. His warning does not belong to history books, but to the hidden chambers of your own heart. Every compromise, every silence, every disguised blessing has been brought into the light, not to condemn you, but to awaken you. What will you do with what you now see? Will you smother the spark, or will you breathe into it until it becomes a flame that cannot be ignored? Picture this, a world where truth is rare, where faith is hollow, where even the sacred has been traded for applause. And then picture a single voice, trembling but unyielding, daring to say no. That voice is the echo of Bonhoeffer, but it can also be yours. To call evil by its true name is not merely an act of resistance. It is the rebirth of clarity, the reclaiming of the sacred. And though the cost may feel unbearable, the alternative is far worse, a life wasted in silence and a soul lulled into sleep by the choir of deception. So let this not be the last note, but the first chord of something greater. Carry this warning with you into the quiet places of your life, where choices are made in secret. And if this truth has pierced you, do not let it vanish into the noise of the world. Stand with us. Share this message. Let your voice be heard in the comments. Subscribe so you walk this journey of truth, not alone, but with others who refuse to bow. Because silence feeds the lie, but your voice, joined with many, can still expose it. The question that remains is not whether the lie will continue, but whether you will continue to live within it or step out into the light.